In the world of business building, we often wonder if it could get any more complicated. GRC, GDPR, ESG, zero carbon, green hydrogen, cybersecurity, and big data. Let's not forget the long funding processes that can make you crazy. If you are a world changing founder and innovator, how do you connect with the support that you need to move ahead? Well, this podcast puts the people, planet, profit through partnerships theory to action by helping you to see opportunities in every episode to create a meaningful partnership. The innovators, experts, and diplomats we interview are all looking for partners, and that could be you. No time like the present to find out. So welcome to Frontrunners Innovate with your host, global business developer Mary Kurek. So hello, everyone. We are taking a look at crime with a global lens today. So we've all heard about the atrocities of school children being taken for ransom, terrorists aiming, or arming young children with weapons, and girls as young as 8 being trafficked across borders during crisis and natural disasters when chaos presents an opportunity or an open door for organized crime to move in. And corruption with organizations that people should trust most, right? We've all heard these stories. And they're not just in Africa, although our guest is from there. They're everywhere. They're rampant. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that, but we'll also be talking about the innovations and the solutions that are coming along so that we can kind of get the both sides of the story type of thing. So for you to know me, I am Mary Kurek, your host of Frontrunners Innovate and the president of Frontrunners Development, a global business development consultancy connecting business partners that create impact. And it is my pleasure to introduce you today to Ambassador Andy Mashaile, who is a retired Interpol Ambassador for the Turn Back Crime campaign with a coverage of 195 countries. Yay. Thank you, Andy. He also serves as an executive committee member of the International Cybersecurity and Investigations Committee. There's quite a bit more to his background that we'll learn here in just a minute with his thoughts, along with his thoughts on criminal activity that's going on in South Africa and all these regions that we just mentioned, all those different countries. But let's kind of lay out the why right now, because we like to kind of get to know our folks that we interview on a scale of what happened in your life, or what was the trajectory that brought you into the work that you're doing today, Ambassador Mashaile.
Mary, good afternoon to you from my side, and to the heavyweight. It's good to be on the heavyweight champion podcast and talking to the heavyweight champion listeners all over the world, wherever they are. My reasons for doing what I'm currently doing has to do with starts way back 1948, long before I was born. My grandfather was in the security industry. One night, my grandfather was walking from the place where he was deployed as a security guard, went through a town called Randfontein. My grandfather was beaten to pulp because he was black. A man who was seeking a living for his wife, my late grandmother, and my late father, was beaten to pulp. Fast forward in 1952, he died as a result of those injuries. Fast forward, my grandmother in 1951 was evicted from the municipal houses, the 4-roomed houses that in the township that was built in 1945. Fast forward to that 1948 apartheid. Apartheid ensured that she goes to live at a place called Moidorpi. My grandmother said, I do not know anyone in Moidorpi. So my grandmother started living from one place to the other. Fast forward in the late 60s, I was born. Fast forward in 1975, I started school in a township called Beckersdale. Fast forward, 1976 came through. We were fighting now the apartheid government. I'm one of those youngsters who was fighting the apartheid government. We were throwing stones at R5s and at R1s with those dustbin lids that you see being used all over the world. We're carrying those dustbin lid and throwing stones. Fast forward, my father passed on in 1978. I was 11 by then. I remained with my grandmother and my mother, and my grandmother was the most important tutor, professor in my life. She couldn't read or write, but she would hold a newspaper upside down and read things that don't exist. Today, I have thousands of books that I have in my bedroom. In my car, I always carry 2 books. Whenever I come to your house, Mary, and I'm parked outside, I read a chapter from that book, put it down, read a chapter from this book, put it down, read a chapter on that book. When I go to bed, I have 2 books. I read this one and that other one. In 1984, I was arrested for promoting the aims and objectives of a dangerous organization called the African National Congress, because it was preaching freedom and liberty. And you remember, as youngsters, youngsters would do all the running and amandla. And I got arrested in 1984. That's the year that my grandmother passed on. After she passed on, I got arrested. I spent some time at a Krugersdorp jail, at the Krugersdorp police station, and I was transferred to a place called Sun City. It's actually Deep Kloof prison. Fast forward, I started working in 1989, working for the municipality around here, the apartheid municipality. I was the public relations officer, because some of my my background qualifications in public relations and communication. Having known the members of this community since I was a little boy, it was easy for me to engage and interact with the grandmothers, because every Sunday my grandmother would take me to church. And I hated church when I was a young boy, because every Sunday I had to don a 3-piece suit on with the under jacket and that clip-on tie, you know, those clip-on ties.
Yeah.
I hated church. But little did I know, Mary, that my grandmother was able to see 50 years ahead. I would be needing to wear suits. And all the time I go to important things, I make it a showcase that I put my suit on. I always have my jacket on and I put my tie on, in remembrance and in honor of my grandmother, who could not read but who produced someone like me. You have gone through, I'm sure, my news clips all over the TV stations, and many of those on Google in South Africa. And I'm grateful to all the women, Mary, like yourself, who continue to provide leadership and direction by bringing some of us to account before the world. That's what mothers do. And mothers are very important. Grandmothers are super important to me. I started working in 1989, public relations. In 1993, I worked for the utility company called Eskom, the ones who are responsible for load shedding in South Africa, who are giving us hassles. During our tenure there, I became a shop steward for the National Union of Mine Workers. I was one of those who were eloquent and articulate, and I got elected by my colleagues at work to be a shop steward. So life went on. 1999, I was seconded to the establishment, to government, for the establishment of the Sector Education and Training Authority. We call them the SETAs. In Australia, they call them the SETOs, SETO, Sector Education Training Organization in Australia. In South Africa, they are called Sector Education and Training Authorities. Those people who cannot pursue successfully the academic line, you sort of send them through your SETAs, where they pick up skills.
Oh, like
Give them,
industrial
handy.
training or vocational training.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. In 2001, I was appointed the Chief Operations Officer of the Sector Education and Training Authority. It was specializing in we were in the energy industry. Remember, I was still fresh and young from the electricity supply industry and a company called Eskom. Fast forward, in 2004, I left Eskom. I went into independent communications advisory or the communications industry. In 2007, I was called to come into a partnership with the police because of the influence that I have in our country, in our community. And I thought to myself, if there's a clarion call to assist in crime prevention and crime combating, why would I not want to participate, in spite of the fact that I was beaten up on many occasions by the very police? Mm-hmm. And it was funny that I actually said to those who were recruiting me, I said, I don't want anything to do with you. But after many people in my community and friends and people in good standing said, no, you are the relevant person to join the Community Police Forum. It is a civilian body that holds the police accountable for the actions that they do in terms of patrolling, in terms of crime prevention programs, in terms of the stats, weekly stats. What is it that they normally meet at station level? They normally meet on a Monday to check what happened the last week, so that you can be able to identify the hotspots. You can be able to stabilize and normalize those hotspots. Also, amongst others, to generate resources from businesses, those business that were close to us, those business that some of us work at, to make vehicles available for patrolling and law enforcement in the communities. By 2008, I had moved from the junior rank as station chairperson to the regional chairperson, and then I moved to, within a space of 18 months, I moved to the rank of being the chairperson of the regional board. And in less than a year, having occupied that position, I went on to become the provincial chairperson. The provincial chairperson would be what you refer in America as the state. I was the chairman of the state board, holding police at state level to be accountable. When they say,
more, mind you, but now in that position, I love that story from prison, where you were actually in prison yourself, where they imprisoned you for trying to fight the good fight, and then now you're over the overseeing body. You know, that is what we call a God will get you. That's right.
Yes. Yes. And Mary, an interesting factor, which I always humble myself when I go into situations, and when I look back at where I come from, then those lessons will humble you. Only if you are ready to become a better man.
Well, not only that, it's part of you needed to have that experience to do what you're doing. I mean, I'm convinced.
Yes. Yeah. And some of these intelligence, they were called security branch police officers, who used to arrest me. When they saw me with the generals at that level, I remember one of them coming to apologize for arresting me. I gave that guy a hug, and I said to him, these things happen in life. I'm happy that you didn't kill me. I have no grudge. I hold no grudge towards you. You were doing what you were expected to do, and I was doing what I was expected to do by the majority of the people of this country. And you are free to come pay me a visit at home. You are free to do whatever pleases you. If you need assistance, I was saying to this gentleman, come to my office at the state office so that we can have a cup of tea and coffee. I could see that the guy was terribly shaken. And when you offer someone that kind of decency and respect,
Yeah.
you actually humble them.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That's a beautiful story. Yeah, so was that the last role that you filled before going into the board roles in the Interpol situation that you've just come out of?
Subsequent to me being the provincial board chairperson, Interpol approached me to become an ambassador for the Turn Back Crime campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is, after quite some time, I decided to become an ambassador for the Turn Back Crime campaign, and pushed from 2014 up to this early this year, or late last year. Yes, late last year.
Okay.
And having established serious networks from the producers of various media companies, your radio stations and your TV stations, and they would still talk to me as an expert because I have a sizable experience in these fields of law enforcement, crime prevention, crime combating, and mobilization.
Would you do me the favor of just kind of explaining what the Turn Back Crime initiative was really aimed at? What was the focus? I mean, I know that crime in general, but was there a particular focus, and why did they put together this group?
The Community Police Forum, community and police coming into a forum, was established because the apartheid police had very little respect for the majority of the people of this country. I want to say black, but I don't want to say that, because even they were even assaulting and ill-treating and mistreating some white people who were sympathetic towards the plight that people like my grandfather and my grandmother were exposed to. So the majority of the people wanted to have to be the eyes on the police, because of the experiences, the beating, the disappearance. I'm sure, Mary, when you check the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was chaired by the late Bishop Desmond Tutu, you might have heard of the horrible things that were done. So the new government said, we don't want people, the new police force, to commit atrocities. We want them to operate hand in glove with the communities, and we want people in good standing to operate in those community police partnerships, so that we can be able to hold them to account. When things happen that are not supposed to happen, people must be disciplined. People must do what they're expected to do. Amongst others, when you claim to be enforcing the law and protecting and serving the communities, come and explain to us, come and give us feedback. How many have you arrested? How many have been successfully prosecuted as a result of your actions, your statement taking, helping people to fill affidavits and that kind of stuff? So that was the most important thing in the space of safety and security that I'm in, because I also consult on safety and security internationally outside of those organizations, that is Interpol and your CPF, your Community Police Forum.
I have my younger son is a chief of police, in a community, here in North Carolina, and he kind of came up through the ranks. And before he was chief of police, he was into the narcotics division. So he worked on that, but I think he misses that because, as a chief, you're doing a whole lot of paper pushing and budgets and things like that. So, and
give him my regards. Give him my regards.
Yeah. So I think he misses the actual police work, but so I have a big a heart for the folks that work in the law enforcement industries, but and spaces. What I'm hearing from different people, because I work a lot with folks around Africa. What I'm hearing a lot is crime that centers around children that bothers me a whole lot, where they're being taken for ransom or they're being exploited through human trafficking. And what scares me is how young that they are. And then I hear stories of people who've gone to a country, and this has been years ago in Africa, and they were crossing a border, and at the border was an armed guard who looked like he was about 13 or 14 years old with a gun almost bigger than he was. Then I hear from other people who are, not necessarily in Africa, but in other countries that are ridden with terrorism. And they talk about the fact that terrorists aim for the youth to try to pull them in, in poverty-stricken areas and try to bring them into the mix and create a sort of family situation. We'll take care of you, and this is, you're one of us now, type of thing. So that's how they recruit. But there's, I think there's solutions to all of these things. And then on top of that, we, you and I were talking right before we came on record about cyber crime and how that's being impactful all around the world, but particularly in areas that you know of. What are you seeing? I mean, this is what I'm hearing, but what are you seeing are the majority problems, and kind of what are the fixes that you think you see out there? What are the solutions that you see out there?
1.2 million children are trafficked worldwide. 600,000 come from Africa. The other 600,000 come from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Rebels and terrorists would target children because of poverty and because they have routed out law enforcement and soldiers in those communities. One of those things that could be a solution is for regions like your SADC, your Southern Africa Development Community.
Yeah.
To come together and ensure that governments in that space take care of the children, spend time in the villages, establishes some kind in a village, establishes some kind of an authority that has the necessary resources to ward off the terrorists who come through. Let me tell you a story. When I do my research and look at the areas where children are kidnapped, I see that in those areas there's little, if no, law enforcement offices in those areas. So you definitely want to have someone. You want to have an authority organization that deals with these kinds of things, that must proactively get hold of intelligence and ensure that children and women are not kidnapped.
Do you think it's, that some kind of education program with parents makes any difference? I mean, do you think that their responsibility along with the children would, kind of helping to boost their alertness, their awareness? I do know that it's kind of dangerous in certain areas where you've got remote schools or you've got places where water is, is not as prevalent. And so they got to walk long distances women do, or maybe even children to go get it and that sort of thing. Do you think any of that comes into play? And if maybe parents could be a little bit more educated to help the situation?
Yes, ma'am. Hence my reason for saying resources that governments in the regions that would need to come together and pool their resources so that parents, mothers and children and grandfathers and grandmothers and parents have the resources that they need in terms of educating their children, in terms of making sure that their communities are safe and secure, in terms of teaching their communities to be open source, excuse me, to be open source intelligence for the law enforcement authorities. Please just give me a second. I need to blow my.
Okay. So as we're waiting on Andy, you know, I think the thing here that we are most concerned about, of course, is those vulnerable populations that are at risk in areas, whether they be in Africa or anywhere in the world, that have, you know, these situations going on in their communities that they're unaware of. And I know that the first time I ever interviewed somebody who was a human trafficking victim, they were trafficked from another country, like in Korea, I think, but they were trafficked to Dallas, Texas. So for those of you who think that that it doesn't happen in the United States, it happens in your neighborhood, probably without you even knowing it. I think there was an offer to my son back when he was a teenager, when he was going to school, that somebody offered him, you know, this was going around. So it was something that they were prompting college students with. Oh, you could be a model, you're so handsome, or you're so pretty, or whatever, and here's this phone number, call us. Well, that was kind of the scenario that got this young girl into trouble and got her trafficked. So that happened even to my own son, and that was just literally an hour drive from where we live right now. So it can happen anywhere. So Andy, that's what we were talking about. One of the gentlemen that I had interviewed out of Malawi actually started a shelter for trafficked girls one day when he was traveling from Malawi to another area of, you know, another country. And he got behind a semi-tractor trailer that was loaded with young girls. Police had stopped it. They opened the back, and little girls were tethered together and then tethered to a group of goats in the back of this semi, and they were just in their underwear, and they hauled them out. They were not from Malawi, they were from another country, but they were in the back of this, you know, this semi. And because he was a diplomat, he went to the local magistrate and said, what are you going to do with these girls? They had nowhere to put them. They couldn't put them in jail. So they take them to the hospital, you know, to get checked out, but they had nowhere else to put them but in, you know, the simplest of any kind of shelter. And so he started a shelter. He ended up taking them in and started a shelter, and, you know, started working with the different programs, UNICEF and, you know, United Nations and whatnot, and got them some education and some equipment and things like that, and some food. And in one case, he told me he got called by the hospital and said there was a girl there who'd been raped by her father. She was pregnant. She had a baby. She was like 11 years old and was there with her sister, who was 8 years old. And so he had to take them in too. And here's you know, a child giving birth herself to a child. And you know, he laughed, but it was a laugh out of, I've not changed diapers in 30 years. You know, and, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what we can do with this. But at the same time, how sad, you know. So I say, you know, there are solutions out there. You know, these are the solution. These are the problems and the crimes that we see they're really scary, that happen one-on-one. But there are those crimes that happen now that the internet is so much part of our lives, everyday lives, and that it's accessible to anybody, anywhere. I don't care how old you are, pretty much. So while we get ready to kind of wind up the interview, this will be the last kind of businessy sort of question I'll ask you about this. But what are you seeing in cybercrime? What is impacting businesses? What is impacting kids? What are you seeing that's happening out there that seems to be organized crime on the internet?
Most of the people who commit crime on the internet are syndicates, very organized, very skilled, highly educated, some of them, and committing crime transnationally, joining organizations like your 'Ndrangheta in Italy, working hand in glove with the drug dealers and drug manufacturers in Mexico. That tells you, and transnational organized crime, very serious. It will take an arm and a leg of governments of the world, like they have started now cooperating through Interpol to ensure that those networks are dismantled. It's going to take us quite a long time. Now that I've spoken about drugs, in cybersecurity, criminals move from where the laws are tough, like in America, they come to South Africa. South Africa is only getting off the ground from a cybersecurity point of view. We saw some 8 Nigerians who were arrested for scamming some women in Florida, some women in about 3 states. They stole $100 million US from those women. Your romance scams are very high in the world and in South Africa. Also, number 2, your cyberbullying, which leads to young kids committing suicide. I have seen in the news and throughout the country in the social media space, young people committing suicide because they've been bullied in the cyberspace. Fast forward would be the issue of phishing women in 2016, 2017 financial year. Out of the 100% of the victims of cybercrime, 53% were women, and they lost 739 million rands. And that phishing is escalating. There's a woman who called me last week who got scammed 53,000 rands, and I have been providing advice on what to do on your getting your court orders to get your Section 205, which forces your cellular phone companies or providers of cellular services like MTN here in South Africa, like Vodacom, like we have Sprint and the other one in the US. So cybercrime is
we're having some technical difficulties. Maybe we can get him back here in a minute. Andy, the audio is messing up right now. Give it just a second. Is what happens when we get on calls with people from Africa. Sometimes we're used to it. Andy. We're having difficulty with the audio right now. We're not getting. Oh. Well, he'll come back in, I'm sure. So, I think that when we start talking about the cybercrime, he makes me think of what's going on here in the United States, where, you get those calls from, used to be the IRS. There's a lot of them that are out there that will try to scam you out of thinking that you're going to get sued. And try to get you to give them some money over the phone. There you are. Okay. We couldn't, that last few sentences that you said we couldn't hear because the audio went out. So you were talking about the lady that called you yesterday and you were advising her
Yes,
to get her
that
paperwork
lady got,
together and to report to the
yes,
telecom industries. So then
yes.
we didn't hear what happened after that.
She went to lay a case at the nearest police station to where that crime was committed. And this is what happened. She received a call saying there's a serious activity on her banking account and they needed to stop it. And because of ignorance, they told her to give them the OTP one time pin, and she did that. She didn't know, people didn't know. She didn't know, and she got scammed 53,000. And NetBank says one of those banks or the bank that released the money said, no, you gave those people the OTP yourself, so we can't be held liable. So these are some of the things that I am focusing on in terms of providing transformational security awareness. People must act. People must not leave their location on, and people must not just willy-nilly give out your one-time PIN. When your bank says there's an activity, you simply say, I am coming into the bank. If it's over the weekend, I will come into the bank. The person on the other line would then say to him or her, give me your location, give me your name and your location so that I can come through. Scammers would not be able to do that. I think the level of consciousness is what I am focusing on now, so that people can know these things and can prevent from being taken a ride.
It is, it's really hard. I remember years ago when I was working with an older lady who had called me and she was in tears. Her entire retirement she gave away because somebody called her and asked for a piece of information and convinced her. And she said they were very convincing that there was something going on with her bank that they needed access to. And they pretended to be her bank. And she helped them out, and she just lost it all. And it's just really sad. I had to get the police chief of my mother's area to call her and tell her the IRS was not going to sue her because she didn't believe me. And I said, Mom, it's a scam. I know it's a scam because I've talked to other people who've had, and I've actually had phone calls in my house on the same scam. And she just didn't believe me. So I got the chief of the police to call her and say, yes, ma'am, it is a scam. Don't respond. She was so afraid that they were going to sue her. So especially when you get that older population that isn't really as aware of what these things are that are going on, they could easily be taken. So I applaud you for doing that. What's coming ahead, and who do you need to help you get there? What is your goal? What are the aims as you move forward in the work that you're doing? And tell me who you think you need to meet, the types of people you think you need to meet to help you get there.
I am hoping to go on a cybersecurity, cyber smartness, cyber saviness tour into as many communities as I possibly can. To ensure that with the new trends in cybercrime, your ransomware, the advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep faking, and deep news, these criminals would pick up our pictures on the internet, our images on the internet, unclothe them, and put my head or your head on top of those bodies, and actually threaten to send them to your husband or to someone else, so that you can pay them money. They can extort money from you. So these are some of the things, the forms of crimes that we don't really focus on, but they're very serious, can lead to suicide, can lead to destruction of families, can lead just to serious chaos. I am hoping on the 18th of this month, I am giving a public lecture on phishing, anti-phishing crime prevention and crime combating. People must know that when you receive an email that claims to be from Mary, you look at the URLs, and the URLs, if Mary works for Sprint, the URL would say at the end sprint.com. It won't say sprint.this.that. So many other things.
Yeah.
People click on these links and these malicious URLs only to be directed to a website where information is going to be harvested on you by you providing them with that information.
Yeah.
So you look at these things and say, I can play a better role in the society and in the community on behalf of those like the grandmother who lost, the mother who lost the money. Like I told you when we started, I am grateful to be brought up by a woman who could not read or write. I cannot sit by and idle when a parent or an old mother or just an ordinary mother loses her life-saving
I agree. It's just too sad when that happens, and there's no need for it. Well, we kind of haven't. Go ahead, Andy. Have we got you back? The audio was cutting out. There you go.
And I would like, Mary, your people to assist me with funding for all of these things. You know, when you go on the road full time and you do this thing, funding is important. Funding would speak your advertising, your publicity, all of these things, so that at the end of the day, you are able to achieve, even if out of 10, you are able to save 6 women from being scammed. That's actually the best of the best, but that would be average from where I come from. If I have not saved 9 women or people from being victims of cyber criminals, I normally rate myself at 9 out of 10. Obviously, that needs serious resourcing. That would be your funding, your posters, your T-shirts, branding, ensuring that a picture is really worth 1,000 words. So I would kindly and lovingly request for assistance for companies in the space where you are to assist me to get this thing off the ground. As I am now fully focusing on consulting on strategy and cybersecurity. But key and crucial would be to go out there and save people. Per annum, South Africans lose 2 billion rands to cybercrime.
Looking for partners. So we'll put the word out there for you and see if we cannot connect you maybe to some companies and maybe some individuals out there that maybe have had family members scammed and who understand these things. So that people have a perspective of the day that we're talking, because you mentioned that you are having a webinar this month on the 18th. As we sit right now is November 10th. So when this gets put out, probably this weekend over, well, today is actually the Marine Corps birthday. Tomorrow's Veterans Day. So probably on Sunday of this week, it'll be just a few days later when your webinar happens. So if you have a link to that or any information about that, Andy, then if you'll share that with us, we'll drop it in with the interview. So people will have that information on how to register for it or how to find it. And anyway, I want to bring this up too, because the lovely flowers behind you, you mentioned were honoring your grandmother that you spoke about when we first got on this conversation. And you said that she was buried a year ago today, I believe you said. And
a year ago. It's actually my mother-in-law.
Your mother-in-law. Okay. So women in your life have really made a difference, haven't they? So that's great. So thank you so much for being with us and sharing the information that you have and for all the good work that you've been doing all these years and what you've endured to get there. you know, the journey that you've had to endure just to get to the place that you are, because everybody has, you know, their experience to put them in the right place. And we're believers in that. And so thank you very much for what you do. So stay with me for just a minute. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else who's watching, and say if you're watching this or listening to it on YouTube or any other place that you get your podcast, you can go to www.frontrunnersinnovate.com, which is our website. And on that site, you'll get this interview, but you'll also get some more information about our guest here, Andy Mashaile. And you'll also get some biographical data on him and LinkedIn profile, so you can connect with him if you'd like. And hopefully we'll get the link to his webinar. So thank you very much, everybody. And until next time, Andy, thank you again. Happy front run. Thanks.
Thank you.